an ancient Greek story about the goddess Eos falling in love with the mortal Tithonus. And she had such an infatuation with Tithonus that she begged Zeus to give Tithonus immortality. And Zeus was swayed by the conviction of Eos's love. So he decided to grant the Prince of Troy, who was immortal Tithonus, immortality. And for the next several decades, they had a very rich love affair, decided to have kids. And as the years went on, Eos started to notice something in Tithonus. His skin started to wrinkle, his muscles started to fade away, and his hair started to gray. And it just occurred to her that she did ask Zeus to grant him immortality, but she forgot to ask Zeus to grant him eternal youth. So over the next decades, Tithonus started to wither away till he was reduced to the size of a grape. And he forever blabbered on till the end of time, immortal, but now just nothing. Which brings me to a very important question, my fellow Toastmasters. If you could decide at this very moment, how long would you like to live? How long would you like to live? 80 years? 100 years? Longer? Because the thing that's interesting is we like to celebrate aging and the progression of life. That's why we called it the golden years, as we have birthdays. But don't you find it interesting that everyone wants to get older, but no one wants to be old? And the reason I bring this up is I find discussions with people, I've noticed that we have this cultural taboo over the topic of death and longevity and immortality. It feels so uncomfortable. You may be feeling uncomfortable talking about the idea of prolonging life, because this might have a lot of consequences. But I want to shed light on this topic and why it's an important topic and why you're living in one of the most important times that we talk about this topic, and how that the concept of aging itself is actually something that we should be fighting against. Now, a lot of people find it uncomfortable because you may be thinking that death gives life itself meaning. That we tend to have this bias that death and things that are older have a lot of wisdom, that have a lot of meaning to them. That it's the magic of life that makes life so sacred. It's the fact that it's limited. But it's sort of a silly idea, because misery isn't the thing that gives happiness, meaning. I mean, if you decided to torture someone and put him in absolute pain just so he would recognize recognize joy or appreciate life more, then you would be a monster. I mean, if you have kids, what kind of parent would condemn their kids to go through life, to eventually be weakened, get dementia, wrinkle, and eventually perish, and watch all of his loved ones do the same thing? And we've gone so far in human history from this aspect that we went from living only 30 years to now almost quadrupling that number. You're living in the best time in history for your health. But this marvel of modern medicine has its own consequences. Even though we live longer, we spend the majority of our lives actually just trying to prolong death. You will spend more than half of your life sick and broken, essentially. Most of your medical costs will come during your midlife and your senior years. Now, and most of you in this room will probably end up dying in a hospital bed of old age, or even worse, watching your loved ones around you do the same thing. Now, this sounds like a pretty dark and horrible thing to think about, but that's the point. We talk about having the war against cancer, the war against diabetes, but why not the war against aging? And the thing is, you won't die. There is no such thing as dying of old age. Death is a result of physics, actually, not biology. Imagine a car. Your body is like a car. And just like a car, it needs maintenance, it needs to have routine checkups, it needs oil changes, but also rubber cracks, metal rusts, tubes get clogged, and eventually all this damage and accumulation will just break the car. And that's what's happening to your body. There's tons of microprocesses that break down your body the same way that a car does. Now, you may be thinking, doesn't trying to beat death isn't that an extremely unnatural thing to do? But if you think about it, nothing we do is unnatural, and nothing we do now is natural. I mean, Maggie, you gave your heroic story about discovering you had cancer. would it be a natural decision for her to just decide, cancer is natural? No, she chose to live. Ranjit, you gave a speech before about the importance of organ transplants. There's nothing unnatural about organ transplants. It helps prolong people's lives. Everything that you do, Ken talking about exercises, doing exercise, eating a healthy diet, these are all our ways of trying to prolong death, fighting for every second that we have to extend our lives. So nothing we do now is natural. But as a result, we have the highest quality of living than we ever had before. Now, one of your concerns you may be thinking is overpopulation. If people started living forever, what would we do about the population of the world? But the thing is, the UN has done countless research that all countries follow a 4-level trend of population growth, decrease, and then level. This is not a theory. This is actually the rule. And they have actually stated that the 12th billion human will probably never be born. So that's not even a concern. And another thing is you might be thinking, isn't it kind of hubristic and arrogant to think that you would want to live forever? Let me just tell you that longevity has nothing to do with defeating death altogether. It's just extending life. And you may be thinking, maybe some people might want to die at some point. And that's fine. Death will never go away. But picture it not as if you're going to live forever, but imagine like when you were a kid, going out to play outside, and then your parents call you in. And then you look back, wishing that you could just stay a little longer. That's what this is like. It's not that you wanted to play forever, but you just wanted an extra 10 minutes, till you get tired. That's what this is about. It's how long can we push this for until it becomes not interesting anymore. So let me ask you the question one more time. If you could choose how long you wanted to live, how long would it be? Because think about how delaying death would change us. Imagine how our relationship to the world would be if we knew we had to be here, if we're going to be around for it, how we would treat the planet. How would we, if you knew that you could work for 150 years, how many careers would you choose to do? How much time would you dedicate to your family and study? Just think about the profound ways that it would change our minds. That anxiety that you feel about the shortness of life, would that go away? Or would it be worse? I don't know. But I think it's important to talk about the importance and view death in a very different light, that it's something that we should conquer, not something that we should embrace. Thank you.